welcome partners to our latest edition of In the Hot Seat, a panel discussion on how technology is solving today's problems. These panel discussions are part of ScanSource's Discover Opportunity initiative, and I'm pleased to be speaking with three of our supplier partners and industry experts today who are going to help you, our mutual customers, our partners, discover opportunities in the government space. So let's start with introductions. I'll go ladies first. Cindy, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and your role.
Hi, good morning. My name's Cindy DeAnnie. I'm the Director for Public Sector for the West United States of HALLE. That includes government, education, and healthcare. And the reason I mention that is we have many applications that flow into the government space in corrections and youth services, et cetera, that encompass kind of that whole portfolio.
Great. Thank you for joining us, Cindy. Keith, I'll come to you next.
Hi, I'm Keith Hughes with CISCO Systems. I'm a partner business development specialist for collaboration, focusing on our federal business. So for us, we're mainly focused, when we say federal, for U.S. DoD, U.S. civilian, and national security agencies. We do quite a bit of business in the state and local and education as well.
Good. I can't wait to bring the security question to you. Jason, last but not least.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Jason HALLE with CYBERPOWER Systems. I'm the channel sales manager, so I handle ScanSource. But prior to that, I did have a role with CYBERPOWER as supporting our federal government resellers. So I may have worked with some of you in the past.
Great. So again, like I said in the opener, we're doing a series of these in the hot seat panel discussions. We have three. Today, we're going to talk with a sub-theme of always on collaboration. We've also talked about digital transformation and how government agencies and government run programs are not immune to the digital transformation we've all experienced over the last couple of years. So lots of good content out on our ScanSource website. So that, again, this is one of a series. We hope you check in on the others. So let's dive in with you three. Cindy, I'll start with you, but would love to hear all three of you tell us where you're seeing dollars being spent these days. What kind of problems is technology being purchased to solve that fall within the government sector?
Well, it's interesting, as everybody knows, last year was a very unique year and collaboration blew up in ways that we never anticipated. And I think a lot of the changes that happened last year are here to stay. I don't think they're going to go back to pre-pandemic kind of versions of themselves. So one thing that we're seeing throughout my territory really is a real drive to voice for return to the office. So what they found last year was their if you will, a little more antiquated systems that they have and that they've had on-prem for a long time didn't work, because when they tried to move into a home environment, authentication became very problematic, sign-on became very problematic. So most of our customers today are really driving to kind of the new voice environments. That's one thing. Depending on where we're looking in the country, there's different focus. For instance, a couple examples: the governor of Florida is very worried about the economy in Florida, obviously, so he is mandating that every single government employee return directly to the office. He wants to, he believes that will really help enhance the economy. Here in California, it's different. They have a mandate to manage to density. So they're figuring out ways how they can have a hybrid workforce, some in the office, some still at home. How can they successfully reduce density? Courts are doing load balancing. So they're buying a lot of video because they want to have the ability to share, the work. Mm-hmm. So those are just kinds of some of the things that we're looking at today that make collaboration look different. But I think it's this kind of change and shift in the way everybody's going about doing business is here to stay.
Just to jump into another thing that's extremely popular now is the edge computing, where basically there's tons of devices that are going to be connected to the cloud. So as you roll out more devices throughout your organization, from a power protection manufacturer standpoint, theoretically, every device that's plugged into a wall should have some kind of surge protector or battery backup. But I believe I had heard edge computing as a whole is a $4 billion market.
Yeah, I would echo what both of you just said, right? I'm seeing a lot of balance between how do we support a hybrid work environment and facilitate a return to office? What does that look like? Where's the balance? I'm seeing it different regardless of which agency we're talking about or specific mill depth in the federal government. I'll say that I think one of the best impacts that I've seen is in equitability for usage of our solutions, right? So previously we talked about what does the customer and end user actually need? Do they need calling, or do they need conferencing, or do they need messaging? And the answer is they need it all now, right? They're going to need to be able to do all of those capability sets, and they're going to need the capacity likely to do it in the office or at home and expect the same experience. And so that's driving a lot of conversations about how do you deliver that? How does the organization take what they currently have and fit that into the new solution? And really, what's the roadmap for them to deal with it?
Yeah, and I'll air a little bit of the personal DeWitt dirty laundry here. We went home, my wife and I did similar times last year. I was set up with a cloud-based UC solution, went right to work when I got home. She's walking around with a physical phone in her hand asking me where to plug it in. We don't have wired network in our house. And so she was not ready for that forced work from home. Glad we got past that and into soft phones and soft clients. But on topic, Keith, I'll stay with you because you teed up and I jumped on the teaser on security earlier. But now that we're starting to see the investments that Cindy was talking about in return to office, edge compute that Jason's bringing up, there's a lot of this technology moving into the cloud for all the reasons we like things being in the cloud, deployment and monthly recurring revenues and all those things. But it introduces a significant security risk. So where are you seeing that being addressed?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different routes on how people are deciding to handle that. First is for a standardization of those requirements. So we're going to look at something like FedRAMP that is based on something that NIST put out, and so that we can have a strategy on how that cloud solution is going to be consumed. And then second is really a honest discussion with the customer on what they actually need. Everybody wants maximum security until they start looking at a price tag associated with it. So there's a balance there of what realistically needs to be achieved based on policies put into place versus what they want to have happen. So that's where the conversation comes into play, where you're sitting down. I see most people talking about, can I stand this up on my own? Do I have a partner who has a specific data center that they can support this? Can we have FISMA requirements to cover that? Or do we need to look at something that is a FedRAMP accredited solution? Or if we're even talking about a higher DoD level, is there an impact level or IL level solution that we can bring into the conversation? And having that conversation about what they want to have versus what they actually need to have are very different things. And I think something that needs to be discussed. And the other thing I'll add there is that this is the first time I've had like deep security ideas come into the collaboration conversation. So, the whole idea of zero trust security was a foreign topic in collaboration until we're talking about this mass movement into the cloud. Now we really need to sit down and think about, what application is being sped up in that data center. What criteria does that data center hold, whether it's FedRAMP or impact level? And on top of that, the applications that I want to run through there, what devices can they support? Do they adhere to things like GA compliance? Do those devices have the capacity to run some type of security on top of them?
Yeah, I remember the days when my biggest security concern in communications was whether or not somebody was able to hijack a SIP trunk. Now you're looking at the entire deployment as an entry point, an attack vector. Go ahead, Cindy. I see you're. Gonna add in
No,
here.
I was just going to bring it down to a little simpler level on the state and local kind of place. The types of conversations that we're having, certainly what Keith talked about is very important in the federal environment. But really, what I'm seeing our customers are facing is, with this cloud consideration and the shift, is one, do they have the bandwidth requirement to support this? Two, what are their security protocols? Do they have, standard ones in place? Because regardless if you're government or education or what you are going to be attacked. It's just happening. There's cyber attacks happening all the time. So you do have to address that, at the level that you require, to Keith's point. So one thing that we're doing is we're recommending, good partners like yourselves, as well as there are companies that, resources, security resource companies that can help our customers figure out what is their security score. What do they need to do? How do they need to add? And this is just conversations that are consistent now within the collaboration environment. It's becoming very common.
Yeah, Jason, I know your company specializes in making sure technology is always on. It's a callback to our title here. But there's also security elements of that too. Are you guys talking to partners about security as well as uptime?
Very much so. Traditionally, right, you plug in a server networking equipment into a surge protector or battery backup. Since then, we recently launched a power panel cloud monitoring system. So you can get a little cloud card that basically will allow you to globally monitor every UPS that's on the networks. So that's something that we recently had training on, and that was one of the things that came up is you'll probably get questions on who is your cloud service provider, just to make sure that they're reputable and secure. So that's definitely something that we've seen. Also, we've always had remote management cards, which will allow you to remotely control the individual outlet as well. And we've had some that want to take those offline because they're so critical. After the oil breach and stuff like that, they've realized that they've wanted to make sure that those aren't accessible and cannot be powered off or on, in which a solution, if they want to have visibility and monitor it, they could go with our cloud software and our cloud cards.
Yeah, sometimes convenience is too convenient.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't even considered that use case, Jason, of the convenience of any, as a consumer, you have smart devices in your home that you can control, but as a result of adding all those devices to a network, it's just an increased attack vector. So that's a great point. So maybe a quick viewpoint from the three of you on, is there a line between where the supplier or manufacturer or as a service provider and the partner? Is there a line between those two in who's responsible for making sure technology is always running?
I'll jump in there just real briefly and then leave over to the gentleman. I think when I read this question, I thought about it a little bit, because initially my response was that this is a partner issue or a partner question, but really it's something that starts at the manufacturing level. So we, especially in my space, we're very sensitive about how we build our products so that we're building, compliancy with all the various security protocols, whether it's Wi-Fi or it's on-prem or whatever it is. So for instance, in the federal space, the JIT certification, in the healthcare space, HIPAA compliance, those types of things. So I think from a manufacturing perspective, we have to be sure that we're building cohesively to meet those protocols. And then, from a partner perspective to that question, I think many of our partners, many that work with ScanSource as well, I think they have deep specialties in advising and assessing and adopting and optimizing their network so that they can ensure that they are secure. So that's my 2 cents.
I agree wholeheartedly with what Cindy was saying. everything she talked about, specifically the secure supply chain, I think is something that realistically needs to take ownership across the board for the partner, the vendor, and the OEM. The other part of this question, I thought maybe from a collaboration perspective is important to consider and has changed recently, is the site survivability. Right? What happens with our VoIP solutions if we're going to have a cloud connection? How are we going to facilitate if there's a loss of that connection? Right? Is it going to happen on-prem with site survivability, or are we talking about redundancy from a connection perspective? And those are two very different things that can be mutually exclusive. And that's a conversation that I think the partners and the vendors across the board and the suppliers need to educate the customers on realistically what they're buying into when they look at a solution.
I think you're speaking Jason's love language, talking about site survivability.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, when I saw Always On as a power guy, that's exactly what I think of is just having battery backups, so that you know, if there's any issue with the incoming power, the utility power, you know, it keeps everything up and running until things can be sorted out.
Yeah, as I mentioned in the opener, the one of the themes with our panels here is that government agencies, government entities, programs supported by government dollars, none of them were immune to the rapid digital transformation we all experienced in the first half of 2020. And the sensitivity and the need to be always on when agencies are talking with one another or with the constituents or with the residents or citizens of their areas. It's, I don't know if I can say it's more critical than running a normal business, but it's got to be. I mean, it's the anything government run obviously needs to be always on. Let's wrap up. Just some quick thoughts on what kind of help our partners have access to, either in navigating the alphabet soup. Keith's been doing it a good bit. Cindy just brought JITIC into it. There's plenty of not only acronyms out there, but skills and accreditations that partners need to have in order to sell into certain entities. But there's also funding and grants and purchasing vehicles out there that they also need to be aware of. So I know that's a lot for the last question, but our goal here is to help our partners when they do discover opportunities, close them. And so I'd love to get some feedback from you three on what you think our partners' best resources are for navigating that.
For government contracting purposes or purchasing vehicles, I think the biggest splash that is vendor agnostic that Cindy and myself would probably both advocate for talking about is EIS, right? So traditionally, since 2015, networks has been the standard contract vehicle that a lot of our civilian agencies have been talking about. And there's a mandate that essentially has a end of a runway. It's coming up here pretty shortly. Let me find the date, May 31st, 2023. And so all of the agencies are looking to shift what they've been using as a contract vehicle over to the EIS contract. If you're not familiar with that from a partner perspective, there's a lot of great public information out there, like the partner pricing tool. I would highly encourage you go and look at that and get familiar with what the categories are and what solutions you feel fit into those categories. On the DoD side, I also want to call out ESI. I know that's a little bit confusing because I just said EIS for the civilian. They decided to make those acronyms sound very similar, but ESI is a great catalog, essentially, feature is what it is, so that a customer can go and choose a specific solution and purchase it at a certain standardization. And so if from a partner perspective, if you're not familiar with those, I would highly encourage doing some research and figuring out exactly what solutions you think fit inside of that.
So I'm going to jump onto that. So from a state perspective, it varies from state to state terrifically. So for instance, in California, one of the big contracts that government buys off of, as everybody knows, is CalNet. In Texas, It's a Texas DIR. You know, there's a national contract we hold with a lot of the states, the Omnia contract. And so partners hold these contracts, and it completely varies from state to state. So when I think of ways to help our partners purchase, I think of things like you have to have access to a GSA schedule if you're selling to government. It's just required. Whether our partners have it through you at ScanSource or what their access is, you have to have a GSA schedule access. The other thing I would say is this time of year especially, and last quarter when we were winding down on a fiscal year, and now we're ramping up on a fiscal year, we see a lot of partners coming in that are vet owned, that are women owned, that are minority owned. Those are big, important pieces that really help a lot of our partners work in the government space. And I think they take priority in a lot of cases. But I think it's so important to have procurement vehicles that you can get in front of when you're working with government. I mean, we have very particular partners we work with depending on who the end user is because they require it. So getting to know what those contracts are, I think that would really benefit you. And then the last little pitch I'll say, and this is what I beat home to my team every day, is if you're not using all of the federal spending and grant dollars that are on the street right now, and actually always, then you're missing a big bump to your pipeline.
Yep.
And, you know, the quotas that we set this year, if they don't, they're not going to make their numbers. So, I mean, there's so many federal dollars out there. If you're not taking advantage of it, you know, both for healthcare, education, Indian Health Services, all that type of stuff. So make sure you're looking into those.
Yep. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, just to add to all of that is definitely get your distribution account rep involved. They'll have some contact at the manufacturer that can help kind of facilitate answers on how to attack these RFQs or opportunities. As far as CyberPOWER goes, we have TAA compliant products that are on the GSA schedule. So we've seen a lot of success in the government space, and then also UPSs or battery backups are covered under the E-rate for education as well. So that's something that networking equipment along with battery backups are included on. And so we've seen a huge uptick in opportunities there for their budget ends at the end of September. Usually they cram all their RFQs in October and September. We've already seen a number of requests for quotes come through earlier this year. I assume some of their budget, was spent elsewhere with the pandemic last year. So, definitely, keep in tune with that, definitely leading into September. Also, E-rate just started a new funding year as of July 1st. So definitely keep those two customer bases in mind because they're definitely huge. And as Cindy mentioned, they can definitely add to your pipeline.
Yeah, well, I'll thank the three of you not only for participation today, but you closed it out better than I could have. I'm going to put my normal plug here at the end that I normally do, but you all just gave them real good call to action to go click the link. www.scansource.com/government is where all of the information for our Discover opportunity exists. On that page, you will find all of the different programs that the three of you just mentioned, unprompted, with end dates and how much of a dollar opportunity there is for each. Not only are we starting to see business go back to normal in this space with RFQs and long sales cycles, but there are still some opportunistic deals out there, opportunities for our partners to get some of that technology spend, especially in schools and in public sector. So again, thank you, Cindy, Keith, and Jason for your time today. And thank you to our partners for your time.